Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal on this last day of November 2017, and wow, we got a lot to cover today, so let me get right at it. This is Greg Anthony. You can get my show at greganthonysjournal.wordpress.com. You can also get it at First Amendment Radio. It's on every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Time, Monday through Friday. And you can also see me on YouTube. Go to my website. There's a donate button there. We're listener-sponsored. And I'd love to... I realize everybody's saving money for Christmas. So if you got a few extra dollars, let's keep the show going through the holidays. And hopefully we'll be back January 1st. Well, anyway, let me start out with a story that was quite disturbing. And it was sent to me by a friend of mine in Rome, and it also appeared on the, I saw it on the mainstream news as well, but they gave it a little bit different twist. And let me read the headline I got from my buddy. He says, "General who defended Europe from the Muslims kills himself in court today." Now, that was sent to me by Leo, and he put together an article. That's Leo Zagami. And I thought I'd read the article for you, and then we'll see how the mainstream covered it. So here we go. Let me get to it here in a second. Okay. General who defended Europe from the Muslims kills himself in court. And his name's hard to pronounce. It's Slobodan Praljak, Praljak, born in 1945, and he just killed himself in court. And he was a Bosnian engineer, film and theater director, businessman, author, but most of all, a retired general in the Croatian army, in the Croatian Defense Council, an army of the Croatian Republic of Herzegovina, Bosnia. In 2013, he was among 6 Bosnian Croat politicians convicted at the International Criminal Tribunal for the Yugoslavia for alleged war crimes against the Muslim population during the Bosnia-Croatian War. Slobodan was not a criminal, but a hero who tried to stop the Muslim invasion of Europe. He was sentenced to 20 years in jail. An appeal was heard today on the 19th of November 2017, whereby Slobodan, upon hearing the guilty verdict, protested his innocence and drank the poison, dying shortly thereafter. And there is a video of him taking the poison pills or liquid. He would have been out of jail in a few months, but he chose to die rather than be declared a war criminal in front of the pro-Muslim New World Order, who now recruit and train ISIS in Kosovo, ex-Serbia and ex-Yugoslavia, a land of 1.8 million people that not long ago was considered the most pro-American Muslim society in the world. Americans were welcomed as liberators after leading months of NATO bombings in 1999 against Christian Orthodox Serbia. Kosovo must become independent so the Islamic minority could build up their training operations for Islamic terrorists right in the heart of Europe. In an interview made with Sputnik from July 17th, a source close to the intelligence services singled out at least 5 ISIS training camps in Kosovo developed in the Obama era. With the full support of Hillary and Bill Clinton, Clinton gave orders for both the 1995 and 1999 NATO bombings of the former Yugoslavia that led to the creation of Kosovo. So this man, Slobodan, was less guilty than the Clintons duo that should have been facing the trial themselves for their criminal acts against humanity and their support for the Islamization of Europe that began in the 1990s. There are thousands of Serbian war criminals out there that escaped their actions. Some of them were even able to emigrate to the U.S. and Canada as refugees, thanks to their friends in power. There were corrupt politicians directly involved that included not only the Clintons, but Mitterrand, Tony Blair, etc. During the genocide, they refused to take action against bloody Serbian butchers, and it's asked that you say prayers for this general. Now, when the mainstream covered it, they kind of depicted him, a war criminal, kills himself in prison. And they were basically not looking at the real story behind the International Criminal Court, which is pro-Muslim. They let Muslim atrocities and ISIS get away with literally murder, while they imprison men like Slobodan, who wanted to stop the Islamization of Europe, which is going on as we speak. And guess who helped that along? The Clintons. And they've been doing it forever. That's why the Clintons and the Obamas, their administrations, started to bring in all of these, the Muslim movement, and basically change the face of America. And if we look at their policies, you will see that to be the truth. They were more favorable to China. They were more favorable to Iran, more favorable to North Korea than they were to their own country. And it was Bill Clinton in the 90s who basically gave North Korea $4.7 billion. Right. And that was a bribe, in a sense, to say that North Korea will stop their nuclear proliferation. And if you look at his speech that he gave, he said it was a good day for America. It was a good day for the world, because by giving them this money, they will now stop nuclear proliferation. But look at 2017, it's just the opposite. Now, another move that Mr. Clinton made was to allow Fethullah Gulen to come to the United States with the Gulen movement, which is basically an anti-American radical Islamic group hiding behind the idea that it's a school. They've set up schools all over America, and they're using it as a front. And Clinton brought him here, and you know what? Obama allowed him to stay. Now Trump's allowing him to stay. So do you think that these guys are all involved in this? They're just coming at Americans from a different angle? Now look at what happened to Gulen. Gulen, if you look back 10, 15 years ago, even more, he was doing the radical Islamic movement in Europe. He was basically behind the coup in Turkey. And the president of Turkey, Erdogan, was depicted in the American media as the bad guy, and Gulen the good guy. And Erdogan came out and said, listen, we want Gulen back here to stand trial for his crimes against humanity and the Turkish people. And guess what? He's being protected by the CIA, the FBI, and all the American presidents. Now look at Obama. He was given how much did he give? $1 billion to Iran. I mean, they were going over in pallets of money. And what is Iran supposed to be doing? The same thing that the Clintons said North Korea wouldn't do. That would be, if we give them money, they'll stop their nuclear proliferation. Obama gave Iran money, and they're not going to stop. And basically, it's a slow move to basically a death house for America. And now Trump gets in, and it's all gung-ho America, America, America. But he hasn't done one damn thing to stop anything outside of threatened war. And so just recently, the other day, and as I said, it's going to get hot, hotter than you can tell. Remember, Pearl Harbor happened right before Christmas, so, you know, don't think they're going to give you a break during the Christmas holidays. But anyway, just the other day, yesterday, I believe, Kim Jong-un, who's called by Clinton or by Trump the Rocket Man, the media reported that he sent an intercontinental ballistic missile up 2,800 feet, as high as the International Space Station, and it's capable of hitting anywhere in America. It's capable of hitting American shore, Japan, our allies in Guam, Hawaii, etc. And what did Trump say? We'll handle it. So they're beefing up this call for war, and it's just a matter of time before something blows. Now, what was funny about this story about the height and the distance that this ballistic missile went was that if there is no International Space Station and space as we know it, then how could it do that? Don't you think that they're in on the game, everyone? Don't you think, where are they getting this money? Outside of the $4 billion, that we give them, they're getting it from the West. And who's channeling it to them? How are they getting it? They're probably using, money laundering banks like the Vatican Bank. And you can bet the Jesuits are behind a lot of this. So there we have the North Korean escalation of war going on as we speak. And do you think it's going to get any better? Okay, let's turn, before I get back to the book, the Arco volume, which I started yesterday, I wanted to talk about, every day you're hearing another case of sexual abuse against women in the workplace. I believe today, Matt Lauer, an NBC Today host for the last 20 years, the bread and butter of NBC, that show, was fired for his first allegation of sexual abuse and harassment to a long-standing employee who came forward. And then the managing director of NBC said that there's good chance that many more will follow, so he was let go. There was another top heavyweight in the radio business, and I forget his name, out of Minnesota. Same thing happened to him, and this comes on the heels of at least 2 or 3 a day. And I don't think you're going to see the end of it. And where's it leading us? Well, maybe there won't be any politicians left. And a lot of these people that are coming forward now are accusing, well, today, a group of women came across and started accusing, talking about how Bill Clinton got a pass for 30 years and how the Democrats, they basically surrounded the wagons and covered for the Clintons. And now some of these women, they've come forward before but were silenced, etc., are coming forward talking about how Bill Clinton raped them, sexually assaulted them, etc. And we know this is a pattern that he's had for over 30 years. And my question to you is, are they doing it now because they want to make it the new normal? Or are they really doing it to basically keep us from thinking about what they're really doing behind the scenes? I think that's the better of the two. Because all people want to listen to is sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And they're giving it to America in big doses these days. Yes, they are. Well, anyway, I want to get back to this book, the Arco volume. And people say, well, Gregor, why are you going back to the 1800s? Well, one of my passions is saying that I wish we had information that the Vatican had in those libraries about history. And I think we'd be able to understand things a bit better, and we'd understand them a lot better if we could actually see that. But we know the Vatican's not a transparent organization at all. In fact, the Vatican is the most deceptive, the most criminal organization on the face of the earth, fronting as a Church of Christ, fronting not only as a Church of Christ, but Christ on earth. And my goodness, they have a good show, don't they? They bring down fake Mother Mary apparitions. They do it all. It's quite a religion they've created. But it's all pagan in the heart of it. And people who are Catholic ought to know that. And they ought to look deeply at what their hierarchy is all about. Now, the Arco volume is an interesting book. And whether it's true or not has been open to speculation ever since it came on the market years ago. And it's been around a long time. And there are critics that say this man, this pastor from Missouri, made it up to sell books. And then there's others who say, no, this guy's on the level, and he did get the information out of the Vatican libraries. And it centers upon these years and many things about Christ and what was going on during that time, and those years that we don't hear anything about Jesus until he turns 32 or whatever. So we got a big number of years that people always wonder what he was doing. What was he like as a child? Where was he? Who knew about him? Were the Romans trying? The word got out pretty early. The Messiah's here, and that's a threat to Rome. Don't you think? Because Rome was very meticulous in their investigations, very meticulous in their record keeping, that they would look for him. At least there should be records of how they looked for him. And did they ever interview anybody around the time of Jesus that knew him? And if they did, what did they find out? Now, many Christians will say, well, that's not important. Well, to me it is, because it shows you that the organization that's bringing in the Antichrist, the Vatican, is not transparent about Christianity. And when I remember asking, a couple priests in Rome when I was there during the 1980s about a book called The Messianic Legacy, which was supposedly written by, it was written by a couple of Freemasons. At the time, they were English journalists. One is now the publisher of the biggest Masonic magazine in England. And their premise was that the bloodline of Christ lives on. And when I asked a priest, well, is there anything about this that could either negate this story or prove it true in the Vatican vaults? And he looked at me and said, oh, son, the people couldn't handle the truth. And so that's their idea, You can't handle the truth. You can't get to heaven without going to a priest. You can't understand God without going to a priest. And basically all they're doing is keeping secrets and making you pay to get your way to heaven, which you're not going to do. But anyway, so the Arco volume deals with a lot of little different things regarding Christ and what this man supposedly found out by getting into the Vatican vaults and getting into some of the old books in Constantinople, etc. And whether you believe him or not, it's a interesting read, as they say. And it's sometimes good to go back because it does give you a little history of what Rome and the Jews were really about. And the idea that Rome would be very concerned about this Messiah, this young Messiah, and try to track him down makes absolute sense to me. But why don't we hear anything about it? And this man tried to find out. And if you believe him, he did find out a lot of interesting things. Now, he says, my idea was that if these records were found in the library of the Vatican at Rome, and in the Seraglian libraries in Constantinople and Alexandria, so these men could get them nearly 300 years ago. Why are they not there now? Dr. Isaac Wise, who is president of the Hebrew School at Cincinnati, and by the way, one of the best Hebrew scholars in America at the time, in his History of the Commonwealth of Israel, frequently quotes from the Talmuds and the Sanhedrin, giving reference to the various circumstances, and often gives the names of the scribe who did the writing. And I find these records have always been in the hands of the Jewish rabbis. And you need not tell me these things have been only produced by the latter Jewish nation, for we find quotations made at the time and by the men who lived in the days of Christ. Those quotations correspond with other history we have of the same events. And the only difference is that the Jewish rabbis put a different construction on those events from what the Christians do. This is the great difficulty after all. Like a celebrated lawyer, after reading this book, told his friend it convinced him of the truth of the facts in the Scriptures. But it did not convince him of its spiritual definition. This is the final point of importance. When the soul is lost or saved, that is, to take the facts of the Scriptures and yield to them as spiritual truth, Collins the First, who was a philosopher, wrote a treatise against Christianity and was answered by another who was for it. This work is in 8 volumes. It was published in Paris by Vallart in 1746. In this work, the disputants appealed alternatively to these writings to the reports made by the Romans, and show clearly that the whole of the Jewish doctrines, record and all, were then in possession of the Romans. Nero refused to believe in these things, which he might have done if he had taken the pains to look into those sacred treasures of learning that were on the file in the Senate chamber. But Origen says, and that's who is standing up for Christianity, says Nero was only moved by ambition with the love of destruction before his eyes. He never stopped to consider nor consult the opinions or wishes of others. Here again I found an unintentional reference to these things. Now the reader must remember that the records were there at the time, for no one disputed the fact But in provoking the unnecessary hostility of Nero, Origen makes mention of these other facts, showing the records to be in the city of Rome, how they came there, and what they taught, that is, a part of these records, were brought from Jerusalem, and were the writings of the Jews and the Romans, who had been officers in the Jewish kingdom by Roman authority. And these were Roman officers, which made them a part and responsible to the Roman government. Can any intelligent man believe that these men would have been allowed to transact the business of the Romans and no records be made of it in the archives of the government? Such a thing is most absurd. The reader will bear in mind that the government among the Jews, Greeks, and Romans was much more strictly administered than in this country today. And all such records as referred to the actions of the courts and the government officers had to be preserved. I now ask the attention of the reader to the investigation of the preservation of the sacred parchments from which come our Bible. First, to the works of Benjamin Kennicott, entitled Vitas Testamentum, published in England in 1780. Isn't it nice to go back to some of these books that no one will ever read again? And you know where they're at. You can just go back on my tape and then go, I'm going to go read the Vitas Testamentum in 1780 by Benjamin Kennicott. And I bet you it's better than a lot of garbage that comes out of these occult pastors today. That's for darn sure. This is only a little more than 100 years ago. That's back when he was alive, Mr. Mahan. We find that he got from the Codex of Hillel 600 manuscripts. When did this Hillel live? The author of the Codex lived about 100 years after the Christian era. Dr. Kennicott also got 16 manuscripts from the Samaritan Pentateuch. Then I ask attention to John G. Rosenmuller of 1736 at Leipzig, to in his library 5 volumes, also his Scholia Testament, all from manuscript. Then to Brian Walton, born in Yorkshire in 1600, who published his Bible from manuscript Hebrew. Because they are given to us by great men and they suit our notions, they are never doubted, and it is too apt to be the case in our world. We are not likely to investigate as closely as we should. What he's saying is really apparent today. People basically believe anything they hear on television. And again, we are apt to be more inclined to investigate those things that are suited to our tastes and interests. But while certain things are interesting to us, we should never forget that there are other things equally interesting to others. And while we may be interested only in the sacred histories that make for our peace, and although the testimony of our enemies may not be very pleasant to hear, we should remember that the salvation of others may depend on such testimony. And let me tell you something. I would say, I've talked to Christians when I say this, they disagree. I want to know everything I can about this Messiah, from the time he was born till the time he was put on the cross. And we get we don't get everything. We get started when he was almost gone. So I want to know everything. Why not? Is that wrong? And somebody will say, well, if God intended it, it would be in the Bible. No, I don't agree. Because I think man had a little bit to do with that book too. Now, we should not be open to any evidence that may give strength to any subject, and thereby rebound to good in a general way, especially if this evidence does not have tendency to weaken our faith. Okay, so I'm going to break it off there because I got to take a break. Yes, I do. And they get mad at me at the station if I don't do it right on the button here. So we'll be back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, here we are back again for round 2 in the Investigative Journal on this last day of November. So we're into that Christmas month. And here we go again. Christmas season in America. Okay, are you going to get a tree this year? I'll do a show about the Christmas tree. But anyway, I've decided this year to get a tree. And usually I don't for the last few years. But this year I decided to get a tree. And we will do a show on that decision. Okay. Has nothing to do with losing faith or an occult practice. It's just going to be an interesting show. And I will get into the real roots of the Christmas tree. Get that? The roots of the Christmas tree. But anyway, we're talking about the Arco volume. And people have emailed me before when I did that. Well, Greg, why don't you leave well enough alone? You know, the point is, don't you wonder what Christ was like when he was a boy? Did he yell at his mother? Did his mother scold him? Did he play with other kids? Was he rambunctious? Was he quiet? What was he like? I mean, he had to get to those years, and God made him into a man, and so he did everything that we do. I just wondered how he did it. And don't you? I mean, there's so many. What did he wear? How long was his hair? When did he start shaving? Did he like girls? I mean, what? I mean, none of this stuff seems interesting to you, but when you talk about it in a spiritual sense, but it is interesting. Because wouldn't he be a good role model for children? Yeah, he had to be. And then there's so many other things. How did he learn to read? Did he learn to read? Or did he just have the gift? How did he learn? How was his speech? When did he first utter his first word? His mother had to change his diapers. He did the same thing we did with those diapers. But all this stuff was never talked about. It's not important. And I think, maybe I'm just a questioning type person. But I think if you have a Messiah, you want to know as much about him. Why, he's only been here a short time. Wouldn't it be great to know every little thing? Or, as somebody once pointed out, that would, and this was an anti-Christian view of this, and he said, well, that would destroy the myth of Christianity. He would seem just like a regular person, and they want to build him up to be something different. That's what I get from people who are anti-Christian or are atheists or agnostics. So the question becomes, could you live, if you're a Christian, would it dent your faith to know that Jesus cried one day because he couldn't go and play with his friends? Or did he cry one day when he couldn't play with his friends? Was he a normal child? Was he considered abnormal? I mean, if he does things like, he did when he was older, kids are going to shun him, right? He couldn't come out and say, hey, children, I'm the Messiah. Well, anyway, a lot of questions. And the Arco volume answered a few, and I think, there's a lot of, look at the Vatican. We know it's the Antichrist organization that's bent on destroying the world and bringing in Satan and bringing in the false Messiah and Satan's religion, right? The one world religion. To do that, they have to destroy Catholicism as well. And how are they going to? And they're destroying America as well. They have to do that. Well, they'll destroy Islam as well. It was one of their baby creations. But will they destroy the Vatican? They're not going to destroy those books. You can bet on that. And whether they destroy the Vatican, the building, those books will be preserved. You bet on that. But anyway, let's go back to what we were talking about. Hence, in the examination of the various versions of the Bible, and of the manner in which they were dug up out of the old manuscripts from the rubbish of the ancient world, difficulties are encountered, and others may not believe as readily as we do. Duranzo, a Greek historian who wrote 36 volumes in Constantinople at the close of the 7th and the beginning of the 8th century, in referring to the prosperity of the city and nation, says in volume 13, page 54, that Constantinople enjoyed educational advantages over all other cities, and that this was due to some extent to the fact that the Christians, under the instructions of their emperor, had gathered and brought their literature from all parts of the world, and it was the great seat of learning in the world. On page 128, he refers to a war that was carried on about the great library that had been brought there by the Roman emperor when he embraced Christianity. Again, he says that when Mohammed locked up the great library, he excluded the learned and with them the wealth of the city. In volume 14, page 17, in speaking of the little battle of Tanzhe, he says it was fought over the sacred books that had been deposited there by the ancient Christians. From these indirect references, I discovered the Vatican wants to control Christianity, right? Well, how do they do it? They got to have the knowledge, right? Knowledge is power, and if they want to use it for an evil purpose, they've got it. From these indirect references, I discovered there must be great deposits of sacred literature in those old libraries. These histories are in the Paris library for the inspection of anyone. And how many people are going to go do that? notwithstanding the art of printing has a tendency to do away with and supersede the written scriptures. Yet there are many valuable manuscripts in existence, some of which are of great value in the interpretation of the scriptures. First, the Hebrew manuscripts. These are either rolls designed for the use of synagogues or square manuscripts designed for private use. The former are all parchment and written with the greatest care and accuracy. The others are written on vellum or paper. Okay, what is a lost art in school? Tell me what computers have done to penmanship. These guys must have had great penmanship. It's a lost art. You ever see kids today? They don't know how to... We took classes in penmanship. We had to make the letters perfect, in between the lines. Now, I see they can't even write. They don't know, that terrible penmanship. But anyway, these guys must have had great penmanship. A lost art. The others are written on vellum or paper. Dr. Kennicott says that all are now to be had were written between the 10th and 14th centuries. Of course, these were written from the originals. How often they have been rewritten in 1400 years, we cannot say. But we know there are many opportunities for change. These manuscripts have been collated by Dr. Kennicott and D. Rossi and amount to 1,135 of them. But it is more than probable that as the Jewish rabbis did this work, they may have left out many things that appeared to them contrary. Right. They're going to put in what they want. The next are the Greek. Of these manuscripts, immense numbers still exist. Dr. Holmes has collected 135. Some of these are preserved from the 4th century. Of course, these are not the records that were made when the events they record took place. Now, reader, our present Bible comes from these manuscripts. The first English Bible was published by John Wycliffe in 1360, just 90 years before printing was invented. The first Bible printed in our language was by William Tyndale, assisted by Miles Cloverdale in 1526. Where was that done? Didn't they do it in Switzerland, I think? Didn't they, because they were banned from England? Now I'm just talking off the top of my head. When Tyndale was executed for heresy by the Catholics, his works were continued by Cloverdale and John Rogers. This book was suppressed time and again and reprinted by different parties until it went through 22 different editions. The last was that which proceeded from the Hampton Court Conference in 1603. There were so many errors in the Bishop's Bible that the King James Bible was put on foot and printed in 1611. Now suppose we consider the many Bibles published by different sects, nations, and individuals, and all coming from these Hebrew, Greek, and Latin manuscripts. The reader must know that the manuscripts have gone through many hands. This we know from the fact that we find Bible manuscripts still in existence, and from these we find Greek manuscripts, Samaritan manuscripts taken from the Hebrew, Spanish manuscripts, the German manuscripts, the Italian manuscripts, and many others. The reader is referred to the Bodleian Library in the British Museum and to the libraries at Leyden, Paris, and Rome. We also have some in America, at Philadelphia, in the libraries of the Quakers, in the library of the Antiquarian Society. The manuscripts of the Hebrew Bible were compiled in the 2nd century, but they never were translated till 607 by Bishop Adhelm under the direction of King Alfred. There were a number of parts of these Hebrew manuscripts translated in the 2nd century in the Arabic language. It was printed by the propaganda at Rome in 1671 in 3 volumes. The American version was made in the 4th century of the Christian era by Mizrab and Isaac, and printed at Amsterdam by Uskin, an Armenian bishop, who was charged by his enemies with following the Vulgate. It was printed at Constantinople in 1705, at Venice in 1805. The Coptic New Testament was published by Wilkins at Oxford in 1716. The Vulgate is an ancient manuscript taken from the Hebrew and translated into Latin in the 2nd century, also one of the Greek and one of the Syriac. These are all of the same date. This Vulgate in the Latin was used in Africa. The church at Rome was under Greek control at this time and rejected the Latin Vulgate and used what was called at the time the Vetus Latina, or Old Latin. This is the history of the Tertullian, Volume 1, page 202, cited that. In the 4th century, Jerome tells us there was another translation of the Vulgate. Under the instruction of St. Augustine and St. Jerome, recommends this in the highest terms. About the 5th century, there was another translation made which is called the Codex in the Latin language. There was one at Alexandria, one in the Vatican, and one in Sinai. Parts of these are preserved in the British Museum. I want to go to the British Museum. I have trouble in museums. I really do. I went to a small museum over the weekend, and I have trouble with them. I don't know what it is. I get into them and I start looking at these pictures on the wall and I start getting double vision. I have to wonder about myself sometimes. Do you feel that way when you go into a museum? Do you really enjoy it? If I'm looking for one thing, I would probably enjoy it. But randomly walking around in a museum, to me, is torture. And someone will say, well, don't you want to find, maybe you'll find something. No, I want to be looking for something special that I am looking for. Then I would take interest in the museum. Okay, Greg, continue. The Codex of Sinai is in the Greek. And in this, the same, did I jump ahead here? No. In the year 748 of the Roman Empire and 330 of the Christian era, Constantine the Great removed his seat of empire from Rome to Byzantium, and took with him all the records of the Christians to that city, as will be shown in a letter from him in this book in regard to having the Holy Scriptures in manuscript, and having 50 volumes bound and kept on deposit. When Muhammad took possession of Constantinople, he had too much respect for these sacred scrolls to let them be destroyed. You bet, because Muhammad was a product of the Vatican, and they must have those too. He had too much respect for those sacred manuscripts. He was told, don't destroy those books, Muhammad. You can kill people. We don't care. Just make sure we get those books. But had them all nicely cased and deposited in the St. Sophia Mosque. History informs us of the dreadful struggle that took place between the Greeks and the Romans over the sacred parchments in the days of the Crusades, and it seems to us that divine providence has had something to do with the preservation of these sacred writings. The scrolls look more like rolls of narrow carpet wound and round a windlass than anything else, but as I have described them elsewhere, I will not attempt further description here. Another question arises in the mind of the reader, and that is, how was it possible for these writings to be preserved for such a long, long time? I answer that there are many works much older than these in existence. Homer is 900 years older. Why not these? Another reason why these writings have not been brought before the world is that no man has searched for these chronicles as I have done. And now that if you do search for them, you can't get in and get them in the Vatican. Another reason why, that's what I say. After getting hold of Acta Pilate, as I did, accidentally, and here they come the terrors on 4 legs. As I did, I always let him in the second half to get the show, give it a little spice, give it a little, what's going on in the background? Doesn't he have a soundproof booth? No, I don't. After getting hold of Acta Pilate, as I did accidentally, I made the investigation of these questions my special business for 10 years, corresponding with many historians and scholars, sending for all the books that could instruct me on these great questions, engaging 2 expert scholars, Dr. McIntosh of Scotland and Twyman of England, and going to the city of Rome, paying our way through the Vatican and then to the Constantinople, where we examine these ancient records, sparing neither time nor expense to acquire a knowledge of them. Then it may be asked again, may I not be deceived? May not I be deceived? May not these men have imposed upon me? To this I would say that is impossible. Then it might be argued, might not these writings have been manufactured to make money out of? If so, it was a poor business, for this is the first and only book ever produced from them. It certainly was a bad speculation on their part. But one says, did not Gregory IX burn 20 cartloads of these Talmuds? Who says so but a Jewish rabbi? If he did, they were the Talmuds of Babylon and not those of Jerusalem. There is no body of Christians stronger adherents of Jesus Christ than the Roman Catholics. Why should they want to burn the Talmuds of Jerusalem, which were so full of doctrines and historical events that are so near and dear to them? No man could go into the Vatican Library without a guard over him who watches him closely so that he cannot move a leaf or change a word or letter of anything that is in there. You can't even get in there now. Forget the guard. If they will not consent to even the slightest change, it is not probable they would burn their works. Men from all over the world are there. Often when we crossed the Tiber, before it was fairly light, there were 1,000 strangers between us and St. Peter's Gate, waiting to be admitted at the opening of the gate that leads into the Vatican. One more evidence to the reader. There are at least 500 quotations made from the Sanhedrin and Talmuds of the Jews by men who have denied their existence. Now I call attention to history, and I will give the name and page so that all can read for themselves. First, Rabbi Akiba, a Reformed Jewish priest, Volume 1, page 22, quotes from Celsus, an enemy of the church. He says there was a dreadful earthquake at the time Jesus was crucified, and that the mist that arose from it covered the earth for 3 hours. On page 28, he says that Jesus was the son of Mary, that he was the founder of the sect called Christians. On page 48, he says Jesus was crucified on the eve of the Passover. He gives extracts from the apostles and never denies in a single instance, but admits their genuineness. He quotes the books and makes extracts from the names they bear. He makes particular mention of his incarnation, of his being born of a virgin, and of his being worshipped by the Magi, and his flight into Egypt, and the massacre of the infants of Bethlehem. On page 52, he speaks of his baptism by John, and the descent of the Holy Spirit in the form of a dove, and of the voice that was heard out of heaven. He speaks of the miracles done by Jesus, and never doubts the facts in any instance, but attributes them to the art of necromancy he had learned in Egypt. But did the reader ever hear of a thaumaturgist producing a descent of the Holy Spirit, or causing voices to be heard from the heavens? Such absurdities are not spoken of except when they are urged against the Christian religion. Aretas, one of the kings of Arabia, who was a philosopher as well as a king, and speaking of the laws of nature, volume 3, page 14, says that Jesus of Judea was a philosopher above the laws of nature, that he controlled all the elements of nature with almighty power, that the winds, thunders, and lightnings obeyed him, and speaks of these facts as being so common that it would be folly to dispute them. Justin says in volume 2, page 42, that the several Roman governors in their respective provinces made reports of the important events that occurred in their jurisdiction, and they were spread on the senatorial dockets at Rome. Would it be great to live during that time? Maybe I'll take my little time machine. I know where I'm going now, right? Time of Jesus when he was 3 years. I want to see him when he was like 10. I'll find him if they can't. I don't know. The Romans were looking for him, though, you bet. And we'll get into that a little later. Now, we find in this same work, page 128, that he appealed to Antonius and the Senate for clemency for the Christians. And after referring to their many virtues and to Christ as their leader, added, "At that these things are so, I refer you to the records of the Senate made by Pontius Pilate and others in his day, the learned Tertullian in his Apology for Christianity about the year 200, after speaking of our Savior's crucifixion and resurrection, and his appearance to the disciples and ascension into heaven in the sight of the same disciples who are ordained by him to spread the gospel over the world, thus proceeds. Of all these things relating to Christ, Pilate himself, in his conscience already a Christian, sent an account to Tiberius, then emperor. The same writer in the same apology thus relates the proceedings of Tiberius on receiving this information. There was an ancient decree that no one should be received for a deity unless he was first approved by the Senate. Tiberius, in whose time the Christian name or religion had its rise, having received from Palestine and Syria an account of such things as confirmed the truth of his Christ's divinity, proposed to the Senate that he should be enrolled among the Roman gods and gave his own prerogative vote in favor of the motion. But the Senate, without this consent, whose consent no deification could take place, rejected it because the emperor himself had declined the same honor. Nevertheless, the emperor persisted in his opinion and threatened punishment to the accusers of Christians. Okay. Now I would ask, says the author, if there were no such records there, would these men have made such appeals? And if there were if they were there, could such things be forged and palmed off on the Roman Senate? No. It seems to me to ask the question is enough. Now, if any man will trace out these things, he will find that I have as much reason for believing the genuineness of the contents of this book as I have to believe the genuineness of the Scriptures, looking at the question from a human standpoint. First, you must know that the manuscript from which this book was taken has not gone through so many translations nor been put in so many different languages, from the fact that it is not to be found in another language, and secondly, there was no necessity for it, and as to this being forged, there was no occasion for that, from the fact it favors no religious denomination. It advocates the tenets of no religious sect. Now I'm convinced there was such a man as Herod, Antipater, and I know that he could not kill all the male children in the city without giving reasons for it, and there must have been more or less record of it. I'm convinced there was such a man as Herod, and I know he dare not behead such a man as John the Baptist is represented to be without a trial, without having to account to some court. I know that Pilate was a Roman officer, and his actions were watched closely, and all his public acts had to be recorded upon the Roman dockets. I don't see why these records should have been destroyed. I am convinced the Jews at that day were looking for a Redeemer, and when the great excitement was reported at Bethlehem, it would be not unreasonable that the Jews should make an investigation of the matter. And again, I know if the Scriptures are true, Mary was subject to the death penalty unless she could satisfactorily prove her innocence. All right, we're going to leave it there. And I hope you enjoyed that. Go get the Arco volume. We'll talk about it again on the Investigative Journal. Have a good evening. Good night.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.